Iron Man traveling with the president. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, things are not going well for the Obama foreign policy or for Israel's efforts and the Palestinian efforts to negotiate peace. After 7 years of feuding, the West Bank Palestinians are now uniting with Hamas, based in Gaza, to create a single Palestinian organization. But Hamas is considered to be a terrorist group by both the United States and by Israel. And that is spelling the end of John Kerry's 8-month quest for peace. Already last night, Israel canceled talks with the Palestinians. And just a few moments ago, I spoke with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as he came out of a top security meeting. Good day, Prime Minister. Thank you so much for joining us. You've just come from your security cabinet, and there has been an announcement. You are canceling the talks, suspending the talks with the Palestinians. Please explain.
Well, I think that what has happened is a great reverse for peace, because we had hoped that the Palestinian Authority President, Abbas, would embrace the Jewish state, the idea of two nation states, a Palestinian one and a Jewish one. But instead he took a giant leap backward and embraced, made a pact with Hamas, a terror organization that calls for Israel's destruction. And he had a choice, peace with Israel or pact with the terrorist Hamas. And he chose to make the pact with Hamas. So that's the blow for peace, and I hope he changes his mind. And until he does so, I think it's very important that we have clarity. As long as I'm Prime Minister of Israel, I will never negotiate with a Palestinian government backed by terrorist organizations committed to our destruction.
Are there any conditions at all under which you would sit down with a Palestinian organization that includes, even after elections, elements from Hamas? Is there anything that Hamas could do that would change the situation?
Well, Hamas could stop being Hamas. Hamas could tear up its covenant that calls not only for the annihilation of Israel, but for the murder of Jews worldwide. Hamas could stop rocketing Israel's cities. They fired over 10,000 rockets at our cities, at our children, at our schools. They're doing that all the time. Hamas could stop sending suicide bombers into our midst. They could do all that, and that would be good. But in fact, they continue to do all that, continue to call for our annihilation. And now President Abbas, instead of embracing peace with Israel, has embraced them. He can't have both. He really has to choose peace with Israel or pact with Hamas. I hope he changes his choice, because that's the only way that we could advance towards a negotiated peace.
And if he says that they are only going to be technocrats, that the Palestinians, the Fatah, the West Bank Palestinians are going to be the majority of this unity government, that would not make a difference?
Andrea, that's the oldest trick in the book. It's called the front office, back office gambit. You know, there are certain shady organizations, you're familiar with them. They happen to be present in some American cities. They put forward, the smooth-talking front men, the men in suits, and in the back room, you've got these organizations, and that doesn't make them legit. We will not sit and negotiate with a government, a Palestinian government, that is backed by Hamas, in which Hamas has effective share of power. And neither would you. Would you negotiate with a government that is backed by Al-Qaeda, that calls for the destruction of America, that has murdered Americans? By the way, Hamas has praised Osama bin Laden as a great holy warrior and condemned the United States for killing bin Laden. This is the organization that we are now asked to sit with. That won't happen.
Well, in fact, the State Department has already said that you cannot be expected to sit down with a terrorist organization, and the United States considers Hamas as terrorist organizations. There's no daylight there so far. You've talked to John Kerry since this decision was made by the Palestinians.
Not only, you're right, but not only vis-a-vis the State Department and the American position, the EU considers Hamas a terrorist organization. So do many Arab countries. So does the entire world. Anybody with eyes in their heads. I mean, these people are calling for the obliteration of the Jewish state, are engaged in terror campaigns for decades, and are openly calling for the killing of Jews wherever you find them. That's what their covenant says.
Well,
these are illegitimate players. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, especially not on the satellite. It's hard. But that is the official European Union, EU position. But there is a lot of waning support in Europe for Israel in this regard. So what more do you need to hear from John Kerry and, in fact, from President Obama to support you in this conflict?
Well, I think we have a clear understanding between the United States and Israel that Israel, as I said, will not negotiate with a Palestinian government backed by Hamas. I think what's important is to bring that clarity to the entire international system, or at least to most of it, because this is a giant step away from peace that the Palestinian president took. I mean, I had hoped, he was sort of on this side of the Rubicon. I had hoped he would wade into the water, cross to the other side, recognize the Jewish state, and make peace with it. We got an early sign that something was wrong because a few days ago he said, I will not even consider negotiating about the recognition of a Jewish state. But now he's not merely not gone one step forward, he's taken a giant leap backward and embraced the very people who call for the eradication of the Jewish state. That's incompatible with peace. He can't think that he can have both, and he's made a terrible decision for peace, and I think, by the way, a terrible decision for his own people, the Palestinian people, because they too must choose where they want to go, forward towards peace or backwards to Hamas. Unfortunately, as of yesterday, they chose going backwards.
Prime Minister, in some regard, though, do you think that you made a bad decision? Do you think that you pushed him by not releasing those Palestinian prisoners, which was part of the promise, part of the deal that had been agreed to with the United States and the Palestinians? So when those Palestinian prisoners were not released, did that put so much pressure on the Palestinian leader Abbas that he was pushed to do something more radical?
Well, we've been tracking the talk and the discussion about going to this direction, embracing Hamas and even Islamic Jihad, another Hamas-like terror organization in Gaza, for many months, well before we got to the fourth tranche of prisoner releases. We also saw documents in which they're talking not only about embracing Hamas, but also abandoning the peace process and going unilaterally to international organizations. So I think this is perhaps part of a deliberate strategy to justify. They say, well, let's get prisoners and so on. These are not prisoners, by the way. These are terrorists who have murdered Israelis, and I made an agonizing decision in the pursuit of advancing peace to release them. But I wasn't going to release the last batch when Abu Mazen, when the President Abbas was clearly thinking of throwing up the whole peace process and smashing it to the ground, as unfortunately he has. He still has the opportunity to reverse the course, to go to the right direction, to abandon this pact with Hamas. I hope he does it, because if we encounter a Palestinian leadership and a Palestinian government that is ready to pursue genuine peace negotiations, we're going to be there. I'm going to be there. I was there. I made very, very tough decisions that were not made by any previous Israeli governments, or for that matter, I think very few, if any, governments around the world. And I will be there in the future if we have a partner that is committed to peace. Right now, we have a partner that has just joined another partner committed to our destruction. No go.
And if he does not change his mind, bottom line, in a word, the peace talks are over?
I think the pact with Hamas kills peace. If it moves forward, it means that peace moves backwards. And it's really, as the State Department, I think yesterday, the ball is in the Palestinian court. I hope they dribble it in the right direction. Right now, they're kicking it backward.